Hey guys, my name is Rachel and welcome back to Auxhart Gardening. Today is going to be the first garden tour at the new place. And so today is actually going to be a little more exciting because I've actually been away all weekend and I haven't even seen the garden for myself in a few days. And I kind of wanted to go through it with you guys so that we can react together to the growth, because it's been, I think, 2.5 days since I've looked at it, and we've had a little bit of rain, and when I left, a lot of things had just barely sprouted. And when they're right here at the beginning of their growth, they're gonna grow really fast. So we're gonna see a lot of changes. And so starting today and every week through the growing season, I'm hoping to give you guys a weekly garden tour so that you can follow along with the growth. This is also a little different this year than last year with the garden tours because I put in the garden really late this year. It is the beginning of June now, and I just put the garden in on like May 28th or something like that, which is very late for me. I'm here in zone 7B, South Carolina. I'm in the upstate, and usually I would have had my garden in by about mid-April with the tomatoes. I would have waited until May for the peppers, but I am at least a month, if not a month and a half behind on a lot of the summer stuff. So it's going to be really interesting to show you guys how the garden is progressing, even though it's a little late this year. And just kind of glancing at it, I'm thinking that we're going to see a lot of good growth. So without further ado, let's start looking at the garden. So I want to start out by showing you guys the first bit of garden that I planted here. I planted this about a week before everything else, and as you can see, I've kind of just dug out the area where I wanted to plant stuff and then put the stuff right there without tilling, without destroying the rest of the ecosystem that was already existing around these plants. And so each little section is approximately the same. I have here a squash plant in the middle, and then there's a bean plant. You can see there's little baby marigolds coming up, and I also have little baby nasturtiums. And can we talk about how cute baby nasturtiums are? They're like little lily pads coming out of the ground. So all along this row I have approximately the same setup with different squashes. Can't remember exactly which ones are which, but I definitely have some pumpkins, some butternut, there's a spaghetti squash in here somewhere, and I know for sure that this one at the very end is a zucchini. So this one's going to be more of a bushing variety, and the rest of them are going to be more vining variety squash. This one actually, I think, has the biggest nasturtium. And so a lot of the reason that I've planted stuff this way is an experiment. I want to see what happens when you plant stuff right into the existing ecosystem instead of like this other garden that I have, tilling the whole thing up and essentially killing everything that's there and then trying to rebuild from scratch. So we'll see how this goes. Got some stuff that's like pretty close together. I mean, you see my squash in the middle and the beans. And the reason for the beans is that they're going to fix nitrogen into the soil, and I'm hoping that they'll be good little companion plants for my squashes. But especially with this bushing variety here, there's a good chance that he's going to end up shading out all the stuff that is next to him. And I understand that, and I'm trying anyway because I want to see what happens. So here is the main garden. If you want to see how I built this and some of my reasoning behind what I did, go back and watch my previous video where I explain all the way from tilling to planting this garden, brand new. All of it was yard, just like this, that we tilled up, and I built this garden. So let's come in and let me explain to you what I've got here. So there's a sidewalk here, and then there's this section right in front of the stairs of not my house, but soon to be my house when it's done being remodeled. And so this section right here, I have planted crimson clover, and this section is really just going to be kind of cultivated into a pathway down to the sidewalk. And there was also, if you can see up here, some erosion going on from water. And I'm working on ways to kind of mitigate that erosion with building the path here. It's going to be a little difficult to get stuff rooted in it fast enough, but I do have some ideas for that, and that'll be a whole nother video. But basically this front section here is just going to be clover, and you can see little sprouts coming up in the mulch. Okay, and then if we back up, we're going to start on the right side here. So I have this cattle panel trellis, and on this trellis I have tomatoes going down. And right at the front I have cute little purple basil and a marigold. There, I planted some marigolds from seed and some I bought at the store. We'll see which ones from seed actually come up. But on this row of tomatoes I have Amish paste tomatoes, and then the second row there is San Marzano Lungo number 2 tomatoes. And all of these are paste tomatoes. And the plan here is to attach them to this trellis and prune them to 1 or 2 single stems as they grow up. Now on the other side of the tomatoes, I have the edge of the garden right here. And right here in the edge, I have planted sunflowers. These guys are getting their first true leaves. Oh, they're so much bigger than when I left. So these are going to be cutting sunflowers. And then also the back edge of the garden there is going to be sunflowers. And those hopefully are going to be a larger variety of sunflower, although I'm not entirely sure how big they're going to get. So you can see all the way are these sunflowers. And then there's actually this weird gap here. I thought I had planted sunflowers all along here, but they start sprouting here. So maybe something got to some of my seeds. We'll look at that closer in a second. Behind my tomatoes, I have all of my peppers. There's mostly sweet peppers here, and then we had a little bit of spillover sweet peppers into this area here, which was mainly hot peppers. If you're just looking in the tours, you can tell hot pepper versus sweet pepper by the color of the tag. These white and yellow tags are the sweet, and the pink tags over there are the spicy peppers. I have a whole bunch of different varieties here. I can go through them. We have Criolla de Cochina. This is a variety from Nicaragua, and it's going to make kind of a bell pepper that's a little bit twisted at the end. I have Ajwarski. It's a Polish kind of pepper, and these ones I liked a lot last year. They are kind of the triangle shape of pepper, kind of like a jalapeno, but they're a little bit bigger and thick-walled and sweet. All of these are Ajwarski. That's another Criolla. This one is a Lesa. That one makes the heart-shaped red sweet peppers. We have Etiuda, which I think is the really large orange bell pepper. Let's see, more Criolla, Etiuda. I put these in here kind of randomly. I just knew they were all sweet. Let's see, Etiuda, Lesa, and Criolla. Okay, so that's all the varieties here. And then hot pepper varieties, we have Big Jim. That's going to be a bigger jalapeno style pepper. Another Big Jim. This one is paprika. This one is an Oda pepper. These are seeds that I got actually from, I think, what number is it? UT 3220. I'll have to double check that and put it on the screen for you, but they are other YouTubers that I got in contact with and became kind of close to as I was starting out my channel, and they sent me some seeds last year, and so I planted them. I don't know exactly what to expect from this pepper, but I'm growing it. The internet says it's a little spicy. We'll see what we get. This one is Buena Mulata pepper. You remember last year? It doesn't look all that healthy right now, but it'll supposedly have purple peppers that ripen to orange and then red, and so it's really pretty. We have more paprika peppers, more Oda, more Big Jim. These two are Banana Pino. These are from the Experimental Farm Network, which I think is really cool. So these variety is a cross between banana pepper and jalapeno. So it's kind of like a spicy banana pepper probably. But the thing I liked about this variety was that it was developed in the same climate that I'm in South Carolina. And so I'm hoping that it performs really well. Let's see, what else do I have? I have a Tabasco, and I think that's it for the hot peppers that are out here in the main garden. We'll see the container garden in a little bit, and that's where more of my hot peppers are. So if we follow back along, you see here's where the tomatoes were. Next to the tomatoes we have my row of eggplant. So this is my first year growing eggplant, and so far it seems so good. I have two varieties. I'll have to look at the tags to remember which ones. This is Nagasaki Long, and my other variety is Antigua. I picked these two varieties because they're smaller eggplants, and I really liked fairy eggplants when I had them from my crop share. So I kind of wanted similar varieties because I like to cut them up and not have to peel the skins off. And I think they're just overall more tender than those regular large eggplants. So on the next row over from the eggplants, I have planted an entire row of bush beans. I have two different varieties in here. The front section is the bush lake bean, and the back section is the purple teepee. And both of these I have grown before, but not nearly in this quantity. I have so many beans here, and hopefully I will have more bush beans than I know what to do with. Oh man, I must have gotten a little off in my planting because this row definitely curves, doesn't it? Oh well, that's what happens. But overall these look good. I think most of them have come up. They're supposed to be in a row of 3, row of 2, row of 3 kind of pattern, and I'm seeing most of them coming up. And if that wasn't enough beans, I have on this trellis noodle beans. These are going to be Chinese red noodle beans. I grew them last year and they were gorgeous, and I can't wait to have more of them. It looks like pretty much all of them have sprouted. I may have overestimated how many plants can fit on this trellis, but we'll see. It's all a big experiment at the end, and we'll get some food no matter what. The second arched trellis I have here cucumbers, and I planted 4 plants on this side and 4 plants on this side. I put 2 seeds in each hole just in case for germination reasons, so these will be thinned out. But so far so good with the cucumbers. And I had more tomatoes than could fit on my first trellis, so I put all of the extra tomatoes back here. These are the same varieties, and they will need support at some point. And I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do about that, because the clay down here would make it really high effort to give each of them their own post, like I have done in the past with my last garden. And I don't have really the room to put in more cattle panels here. So we're gonna have to find something kind of in between for these guys. Now if we come back to the back here, you can see my second row of sunflowers sprouting. Oh, they look so good. I can't wait to see these sunflowers grow up. My reasoning with putting them on the edges of the garden is sort of a natural fence, kind of keep some deer from wandering through as easily, and kind of protect the garden. Now this side is going to be squashes, and it looks like they have just now started to sprout. This is gonna be some more of the pumpkins and butternuts and zucchini. And with this, what I've done is I've alternated a winter squash and a summer squash, and a winter squash and a summer squash, because the summer squash are going to be spent way before the winter squash are done. So hopefully I'll be able to pull them out and give the winter squash some more room to grow up near the end of the season. Oh, and you can see on the outer edge here, my little marigolds are sprouting. What happened the day that everything got planted is we had some rain, and a few of my seed packets actually just got wet. And it was either plant them now or let them go to waste. And so there's actually going to be a lot more marigolds around here than I had originally planned for. But, you know, it's not going to be a bad thing, I don't think. We're going to have lots of flowers. Oh, and I forgot to tell you guys about the zinnias. So right in here, in between my arched trellises, I put in zinnias, and I'm hoping that they'll kind of fill in the space in between these trellises. And they're also scattered kind of throughout the garden because that was another set of seeds that got wet. So there's going to be a lot of zinnias around, and hopefully they're pretty and they add to the garden. And anything that I don't need that's getting in the way, I won't feel bad about pulling out. So this is really my first time planting a space this large. Anything I do this year, don't take as this is what you should do, because I really don't know what I'm doing. I kind of tried to expand what I was doing to a larger space, but I just have this feeling that I'm not really utilizing the space to the best of my ability. You know, I got to the point while we were planting where I was like, oh, I have all this extra space. What else do I have that I can put in? So there wasn't a lot of forethought, and I wasn't really prepared for just how much space I have. And so definitely not using my space efficiently. And especially with stuff like the beans, I may have planted way more than I need. We'll see, because I'm really just feeding me and my boyfriend and sometimes his family, but I'm not feeding a big family, and this row of beans kind of looks like the sort of row of beans you would plant to feed a family. So I'm going to be learning a lot about preservation techniques as well. The big thing that I really wanted this year was the tomatoes and the peppers, and looking at the amount of sweet peppers that I have, I don't have any harvest from them yet, obviously, but I'm thinking that I could plant more sweet peppers and less other stuff as we go forward. But it's really just a big experiment, and I hope you guys are gonna get a kick of watching me succeed or fail, whichever it may be, along the way. I'm actually thinking about adding another garden here. I know I just talked about how I already have more space than I know what to do with, but you'll notice that in this garden I haven't really planted any of my herbs or perennials, and that's something that I'm still kind of thinking about what it is I want to do. My initial thought was that I wanted to do a separate perennial section of garden somewhere else, and then I was watching videos on permaculture. I think specifically it was a video by Canadian Permaculture that I was watching, and he mentioned how beneficial it can be to plant perennials and annuals next to each other, so that when in the spring your perennials start coming up, they are immediate shade and protection for your soil, so that as you're planting in your annuals, they already kind of have that established ecosystem, they have that established protection, especially little baby seeds when they're coming up. And so I am now maybe rethinking what I'm going to do. There's the part of my brain that really wants everything to be separate and neat, and the idea of planting perennials, especially some herbs like mint, that will take over. Probably gonna have to keep those contained somehow, somewhere, because they do really take over. But things like my oregano or my dill, all my basil, these things I can plant probably interspersed in this garden. But that means that year over year, that specific spot is going to be that plant. And there's not going to be as much flexibility in terms of moving stuff around. And that scares me a little bit, I guess. But I don't know, maybe it would be a good thing to do. And maybe it would help make my soil healthier and my garden healthier. So those are things that I'm considering as I'm building more gardens. But again, I am not the expert. I'm just here experimenting on camera for the benefit of you guys. Alright, so now I'm going to take you over to the house I'm actually living in, where my container garden is. And you'll see I have a very, very long hose that I'm currently using to water the big garden because the water at the new house isn't turned on yet. But I still have a fair amount of stuff over here. So these 4 containers right here are potatoes. I put in potatoes about a week ago, so they probably shouldn't be up yet. Although if they're not up by next week, I might start worrying a little bit. They already had stuff growing out of the eyes of the potatoes, and I hadn't really planned on planting them, but since they were already growing, I figured I might as well try. These are plants that still don't really have a home. I have lavender that I got to go in the perennial garden. I have my strawberry plant, which some of you who've been following me for a while may remember that I thought I killed my strawberry plant. It's never been a very healthy plant, and I entirely stopped taking care of it because I thought it was dead. And then it just started growing back. So I think this strawberry deserves to live, and it deserves a permanent home somewhere. Just haven't figured out where yet. And I have a few more perennials here. I have marshmallow plants and chamomile that I'm planning on putting somewhere. We'll see. Over here, I have some of my other herbs. My cilantro went to seed, and I'm slowly collecting the seeds from it so that I can replant. Cilantro here in the south, it doesn't like the heat, so you really kind of have to grow it over the winter, which is unfortunate because cilantro goes so well with all the summer foods, in salsa particularly. So I think this is going to have to be an indoor plant for me this summer. Next to it is my parsley. This is the parsley's 2nd year, so it is going to seed as well. And I am going to try and save some seeds and replant. Normally in a perennial garden, I think that this would reseed itself and I wouldn't really have to do too much with it. But since it's been in a container, it needs a little bit more attention. I also have here some basil. I have several varieties. This is an Emily basil, which is really just a different variety of a regular sweet basil. I have more hot pepper plants. I think that one's a Buena Mulata. I still have my onions. Some of these you'll see are starting to bulb up, and I'm thinking I might get some decent sized onions from these itty bitty babies. I don't really know why they never got any bigger than this, but at least it's not an entire waste. I have in front of me here a stevia plant. This one is from seed this year. You'll see its brother that reseeded itself in a minute. This is the lavender plant that I'm trying to grow from seed, and I bought the other one because this one seems to be kind of stuck in this baby stage. I'm not sure if it'll ever get bigger. Plant that's not having any trouble getting big is my dill. It is also going to seed, making these beautiful big flower heads. Let's see, so we have more basil, more hot peppers. Some of these I lost the tags to because I put them in the edge here and then they just fell down to the bottom, and I'm not really willing to dig them out. So we'll see what they are when they make peppers. I have also, this is lemon basil. Lemon basil will not stop going to seed. So I don't know how much effort I can really put into keeping it from going to seed. Let's see. Okay, this one, it looks very similar, not the same. This is stevia. This is the one that regrew from, I said reseeding earlier, but I think it regrew from its actual root ball. And you can see it's much farther along than the one that I planted from seed this same year. So this looks like this is going to be a really healthy perennial plant for me in this area. We have more peppers, more onions. These ones are also starting to bulb up. I have my beautiful variegated fish pepper plant, although I think being out here in the sun, the variegation isn't as pretty as it would be. We have more purple basil, more peppers, and kind of wanted to show you guys this interesting pepper here at the end. This one is the Tabasco pepper that I brought inside for the winter. And probably you'll remember the last time you saw it, it was really tall and not looking so healthy. It was recommended to me that I cut it back, and I did. You can see some of the remnants maybe of the older stem. And obviously it liked that, and it has grown back in force. It is the biggest pepper plant that I currently have. Let's see, this is a chamomile. This is the same as those ones in the cups, but it got moved a couple weeks ago into this larger container, so it's feeling a lot better. And then I have the Edgevarsky pepper that I saved over the winter. This one seems like it has never really fully recovered, although it is trying to put on flowers, because I think it thinks it's dying, and it's like, oh man, better reproduce. I don't know if this pepper plant's ever really going to be healthy, but I'm just gonna kind of let it do what it's gonna do and continue to watch what happens with it. This one is different from the Tabasco because this one I brought in for the winter, but it was already in its container for its whole life. This one I dug out of the garden bed and put into a container. And it looked healthy enough for a while, but there was one point where it just started looking sick and never really got better. We'll see. As always, that's what I always say. We'll see what happens. Up here on my deck are the last few of my herbs and also my micro dwarf tomatoes. These are orange hat tomatoes. They don't get too big. They're determinate variety, and they make these cute little, what will be soon, orange fruits. And this one is getting a little top heavy. I had to prop him up a little bit. But it looks like I'm gonna get a lot of good fruit. I still have my thyme plant, my spearmint, my catnip, and my oregano. Again, this is in its second year, so it's going to seed. And I'm going to end the tour indoors because we cannot end a garden tour without checking out my single seed challenge. This is my jigsaw pepper, my single seed challenge, my gorgeous purple variegated beauty. With the backlight, it's a little harder to tell. So if I get y'all around this angle, you can see it's just a beautiful, beautiful plant. And being grown indoors, the variegation is really coming out. We have little baby peppers growing. I think this is about as big as the fruit of a jigsaw pepper gets. These are spicy, somewhere in between jalapeno and habanero spicy. And the dream is to be able to pull one or two of these off as I'm cooking right from the kitchen here. Very convenient, very gorgeous houseplant to have. And by the way, if you haven't heard of the single seed challenge, oh, that's my cat, Draco, baby Draco, what do you want? Draco the garden cat is not allowed outside here at the new house because one of the neighbors has dogs that are known to get out and eat cats. They're moving soon, so Draco will be able to go outside and be a garden cat once again once they move. But for now, he has to stay inside where he's safe. So anyway, the single seed challenge is a challenge that was started by Scott Head over at Black Gumbo Southern Gardening. And the idea is to pay attention to what you're growing. So I have my single seed challenge plant here. It was planted from one seed at a time. So as gardeners, we really tend to just like sow a lot and keep whatever works. And this challenge is about specifically valuing and noticing the power in a single seed. And so when you look at this plant, you can think about how it grew from just one seed planted in this pot into this whole plant that is now producing seeds of its own. While I'm here, I'll show you the orchid I got from the store. I did not plant this on my own. I just bought it because it's pretty. And lastly, I have here, this is another kitchen pepper I'm growing. This is, I think, an aji pepper. It's gonna be little orange spicy peppers. So that is the entire garden tour. That is everything that I'm growing this year. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me. As I said before, I will be doing a garden tour every single week during the season. So if you want to keep up with that, you can subscribe. That way you don't miss a week and you can watch the garden progress in real time and see what happens when you plant your garden way too late in the season. And also thank you to all of you who are new here. I know Scott recently shared one of my videos, and so a lot of you came over here from his channel, and in the past everybody from Scott's channel has always been really nice to me and sweet, and a lot of you have already made more sweet comments on my videos, so I really appreciate that. I appreciate the acceptance into this community, even though I'm kind of sitting here like I don't really know what I'm doing, but I hope that it is helping someone out. And with that, I'm just going to say thank you for watching, and until next time, I wish you happy gardening.